Welcome to the September 19th edition of Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men don't play. We ushered in the show tonight with a classic song by the great Herbie Hancock, Chameleon. The gentleman sitting to my left has chameleon qualities in many ways because he's had to morph himself into Superman, the junkyard dog, the chief cook and bottle washer, formerly trained here in the city of Los Angeles, as I had said in some of my remarks earlier in form of advertising today's show, that if anybody knows the city of Los Angeles, James Burks does. He's a native of Watts. He survived the rise of 65 and formerly educated here in the city. But what he has done in his lifetime that is, I think, internationally important is the African marketplace. But before I go any further, welcome, James, to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
Thank you, Uncle Bobby.
That's strange to come in. See, James and I have known each other for about 25, 30 years now. And actually, our mutual friend, Hawthorne James, he was doing the movie Five Heartbeats. And he said, man, come on up to L.A. I was living in San Diego at the time. He said, man, come on up to L.A., man. They got this marketplace thing that's popping, and my partner's, running it. And I'll never forget coming up here in the 80s. And I just couldn't believe I was in L.A., man, quite frankly, because the way that you had laid out the marketplace, it wasn't nothing comparable to it. So my first question to you would be, how did you conceptualize it, and how did you make this historic event happen?
First of all, I think what you said is a tribute to what we were trying to accomplish. I wanted people to have a black experience, a real African-American black experience. And I didn't want them to have to deal with telephone poles, lights, anything that had to deal with contemporary Los Angeles. I want them to come in and to get immersed in the culture of the African diaspora. And at the forefront of that, I wanted to place the African-American culture. What we've given, what we contribute to the world, we contributed to this city, the founding of this city. And then I have a background that's very diverse. I mean, I studied engineering earlier in school. I studied architecture and mechanical engineering. And I worked with the LA Community Design Center and doing feasibility studies for nonprofit organizations. I worked in the arts as a director of the Inner City Institute for the Performing and Visual Arts. It gave me a lot of theatrical kind of experience. I have a credential in gerontology that I got from USC, so for 2 years I did a project just in the senior citizens community. Started 2 senior citizen multipurpose centers. Just trying to get people to live their own life, not live the one that's perpetrated on us by people who don't look like us and never walked in our shoes. I mean, I always refer to LeBron James and how people talk about it, but they never walked in that man's shoes. They never even made the first team in their Pop Warner team. And they're going to give him heck because he decided to make a decision to affect his own life. Well, the marketplace was the same kind of thing. I wanted something that will move us away from those temporary events that allow to marginalize African-American communities. And the reason why we don't have African-American communities now is because all the communities that I know of always had a festival, but then when it's over with, it's over with. They'll bring some public property, they'll bring their street sweeper through there and sweep it up. It's like it never existed. So when we wanted to play a role in the tourism industry, there was no place to say, come to Los Angeles and have an African-American experiences. Here are the churches, here are the restaurants, here are the schools, here are the entertainment centers, here are the beauty shops, here are the barber shops, here are those things that appeal to people of African descent. And so the marketplace was my version of building a Afrocentric combination of Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, Universal City Walk, before 3rd Street Promenade and before the Grove, and building it so that it appealed to every single culture of the African diaspora, Afro-Latinos, Afro-Native Americans, Afro-Pacific Islanders, Afro-South Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Africans, Afro-Europeans, and African Americans. And so each year was a testament, because each year I would make a point of changing it. Because I saw what my predecessors went through. I saw what Tommy Jaquette went through with the Watts Festival. With short-lived black elected officials helped sponsor it for 10 years, and then it was up to him to find a way to sustain it. The same thing with Jackie Tatum and the Festival in Black up at MacArthur Park. Lasted not even 10 years. And the same thing with the Caravana Festival by Alonzo Davis and the Brockman Gallery. It didn't last that long. It's just like the thing that's going on right now. We have a Taste of Soul, but it has to be an experience. When people come, they have to see themselves in the other culture that's there. I wanted white people to see themselves in the culture of African Americans that we gave them, or that they just appropriated because they could. I wanted black folks to see themselves in a positive light when they came there. I wanted to teach them without preaching to them, what they experienced is what it was. When they came in, I wanted them to experience the whole travel through the African diaspora, enter through Africa, enter through the main gate, and find yourself in the African region. Find yourself in the North American region. Find yourself in the Caribbean regions. Find yourself in the Pacific region. Find yourself in the Children's Village or at the amphitheater or looking at all the exhibitions, All the tents were different sizes. I didn't want them to be one size. I didn't want people to get the feeling this was a temporary canopy festival. I wanted artwork on the ground, so I put tall pieces of artwork at the gate and throughout the space. I wanted people to be able to go into a restaurant without having to get into a porta potty and it's too hot, it stinks. I wanted them to be able to come in and there's music playing, there's somebody cleaning it every minute, and it's clean when you walked out. I wanted people to come to our community and have a good time. And so when I started it back in '85, I had visualized something like that, and I actually started thinking about it in 1976 after I read Ivan Van Sertima's book that came before Columbus. Mm-hmm. And I said, why don't people know that we've been here long before slavery, or that this is the influence of Africans all over the world? And why are the Africans investing in their communities all over the world as opposed to just taking advantage of the remittances that are sent to them by Africans who are now expatriates living here in America? Where they're not investing in the African-American farmers or the African-American vintners or the African-American filmmakers or manufacturers here. I wanted people to see when they came to Marketplace that these are the things we did. So I had the African-American Black Adventures Museum. For the first time, we created that at the African Marketplace. So when people walk through, not just black people, not just white people, but everybody could see what we've given to the world. So it was a testament that people hated it, that it was successful.
Now, had you been to Africa before doing the Marketplace?
No.
So all of that just came from your research and your imagination and your creativity?
Yeah. I didn't, after we did a festival in 1978 at Inner City Cultural Center, I said, why don't we do this year-round so that it's there when we have black family reunions and people come to Los Angeles to connect with their families? They can say, let's go to the African Marketplace and have dinner. Let's go to the African Marketplace and have our family reunion on the Festival Plaza where we can build our own kind of reunion, We never had that. We are the greatest consumers in this country, and we end up spending more money and losing more money because of a one-time event, no sustainability at all. And so I used to tell Africans when they come here, I said, well, this is Africa's marketplace. No, it isn't. This is an African American marketplace, but we call it the African marketplace for reasons that we're trying to connect with those who are on the continent, with those who are outside the continent. So it was always a challenge, with groups, and finally people got into it, that this is the place to connect in the United States if you're members of the African diaspora. So it became more family.
Now, the one thing I do recall from my first experience coming to the African Marketplace was the name James Burks. It wasn't in association with a consortium or anything. This was driven by you primarily, and that was one of the reasons it was sustained all of those many years, but at the same time, I'm sure it created a lot of hardships. Could you kind of elaborate on that element of the experience?
When I left the Inner City Cultural Center, I took a job with the Cultural Affairs Department.
Here in Los Angeles?
Here in Los Angeles. And I took a job as director of the William Grant Still Community Arts Center. The first thing I did, the first act, when I took it, I got rid of the word community out of the William Grant Still Arts Center's name. because I visualize community being limited to the community and being minimized as a social welfare project. And then I changed the focus to not just African American, but to the African diaspora. I wanted to increase my market.
Just for my listening audience, who was William Steele and the significance of that namesake?
Probably one of America's greatest composers. In 1932, he submitted 2 compositions for the World's Fair that was going to be in New York, and both of them were selected. They didn't know that he was black. And so when they found out he was black on one of them, they tossed it out. He had the other one, And he did a piece called "Troubled Island" that I've always wanted to do. I mean, it's an opera piece, but he's a fine composer. I'm a French hornist, so I have a lot of respect for classical music. And I met him when I was I was a deputy for Councilman Bob Farrell back in 1976 and 77. And they had an inaugural opening of the William Grant Still Arts Center. Never thought I'd be directing it 10 years later, and I went there to represent him, and I met Dr. Still at that time, and I met him over at Southwest College because I was working there as well as an assistant to the community arts director, community services director. So I met him on several occasions. I know his daughter, Judah Still, who continues to push his music and his compositions. But he was an interesting man who lived right off of Pico Boulevard, so he wasn't that far from William Grant Still Arts Center. Yeah.
So, again, when you conceptualized doing the first African marketplace, what was the single most difficult thing to accomplish in order for that to happen?
Well,
that's a tough question, I know.
It really isn't, because when I first did the marketplace, it was done on a space about 4 times the size of this room on the patio. But the vision never changed. The vision was to do something that's big and that was grand and had diversity in it, and people had to spend a whole day there and still don't see everything. So I wanted to architecturally design it so that it could provide you with a meandering experience. So even when it was on the patio of the William Grant Still Arts Center, I began to look forward to the next year. Now, when I presented it to the Cultural Affairs Department, the general manager at the time, that I wanted to do an event around the William Grant Still Arts Center, one, to call attention to the William Grant Still Arts Center, and 2, to build something that was different. And first thing he told me, well, we don't want to do another festival. I said, I'm not going to do a festival. In fact, I spent 24 years repeatedly telling people it is not a festival. It is a destination. It is an experience. Because they want to relegate African Americans and poor people in general to the festival status, because it's a way to minimalize your community, minimalize the culture. That's not important. It's just something for a one-time experiment. It's a one-time appeasement. Placate the community. Let them do a festival in the summer, then it won't be a riot this summer. All the riots in this country happen generally during those hot months of the summer, and people are just disgusted and tired of it. So when I presented it to him, he said, no, we're not going to help you fund anything like that. I said, okay. So I took $250 of my own money. I asked my mother if she would mind selling food. And I got Brian Beret as one of the first vendors and the Friends of the William Grant Still Arts Center. Those were my first vendors in the marketplace. Now, 3 people, and you say from 3 people to 360, But the vision was real. I could see it. I could visualize it, and I wanted the rest of the world to see this. But first I had to concentrate on the rest of the community seeing it. Then I had to develop a plan to attract diverse people to it. So each year for the first 3 years it was at William Grant Still, from 85 to 88. I just expanded it. I expanded in the back, inside the William Grant Still Arts Center, in the alley next to the center, and then in the lots, I asked the owners of the property, could I use their lots for different villages, as you saw in the final product, And it grew so fast that by 88, we had to look for a place to move. And so in 89, I located the Leimert Park over at La Cienega in Fairfax. And so the idea was to build something that would be there for about 3 years. I knew we wouldn't be that long. So we put pipes in the ground, so each year we can come back, all we do is stick the pipes in the ground. We wouldn't have to do the construction every year. And the whole objective was always about consolidating and monetizing costs. It's about building a sustainable institution and about building a market share for it. So I had to diversify the plan to build a market share so that I had people coming from all over. And then my first year was about reaching the community within about 20-block radius of the William West Arts Center. The second year, I wanted to reach people within a 3 to 5 mile radius. By the fourth year, I was looking at a 20-mile radius, and by the end of the 8th year, I was looking at every region, regionally. I was looking at every county connected to Los Angeles. And then I began looking national and then international. And as you know, we had a great international audience. People would fly in to partake of the African marketplace. People fly in to participate as merchants in the African marketplace or as performers in the marketplace. And then I had to negotiate fees and deals with artists, because the arts community are like this. If they figure that they're doing performance at a local club and they're getting paid $250 for 2 sets, that when somebody's doing an African marketplace or with that kind of audience, they should be able to demand $1,500 to $2,000. So it's not going to work that way. I'm interested in hiring artists to perform 1 set, and because the more artists I hire, the more jobs and opportunities are going to be. Because what I'm trying to get you to understand, there were two philosophies. One, I wanted to be here all the time, so I started the first year every 3rd weekend of June, July, and August. I wanted people to know it'll be back. It's not gone. It'll be back. Secondly, I wanted the artists and the participants to understand it's not just about you. It's about the global us. So you're going to have to reduce your costs, and I'm asking you to reduce your costs based on consistency. If you're able to come back all the time and perform, then you're supporting us like we're supporting you. And that's what you need to tell your band members, that we know we're going to always be able to do the African marketplace because our fees are going to be reasonable. We're going to at least reach union minimum so that we're paying. And then the first couple of years, when I ran out of money, I'd tell an artist, look, we run out of money. We've already paid the artists we have, but we do have space. You perform this year, next year you'll be the first person we hire. And we always kept it that way, the first person we hired each year, the following year. Then it became design-oriented. How do you design something that's going to engage people? So I studied World's Fairs all the way back to 1886, county fairs, special events. I studied African Village in terms of how they were laid out and designed. And then I dealt with the olfactory, what people smell first, then what they saw. So when you first came to Marketplace, you were what surprised you. I thought you were going to say the smell, because I did 2 things. I took a page out of McDonald's book, Welcome to McDonald's Place, Can I Help You? I took the best volunteers that we had, and they volunteered 1 year, and I hired them the next year to work the gates. And they were to be as nice and pleasant to people who came there as they possibly could. Secondly, I told all of the people we hired to do maintenance on the grounds that this is your quadrant. I don't want to see a cigarette butt or a piece of paper lie on the ground more than 5 minutes. I want it clean. And then I had to teach the vendors how to barter, because our culture is a bartering culture. I said, don't sit here and just tell people, that's $100 and stick with it. Barter, make them engage them in conversation, talk with them about the product, I mean, years we went by. For 1 year, I had to kick out I had 363 vendors. I kicked out all but 175 because people began treating it like it was a swap meet. I said, it's not a swap meet. That's something run by somebody that's not of our culture. This is for authentic goods that are built, manufactured by people of African descent. Now, those people who had small businesses, I gave them something called the consignment tent. I said, you don't have the quality or the quantity of merchandise, so we're going to put you here right now so you can grow. And I put 15 of them through USC's Fast Track Small Business Program, because I said my goal is to build a permanent year-round African marketplace. I've already selected 10 sites in Los Angeles that can handle it. I mean, I don't know where I got the energy from in those years. I was doing everything. I was fighting with people. I was debating with people. I had people who didn't like my attitude, people whose attitudes I didn't like. But think about it, in 24 years, we didn't have a single incident.
Not one that I knew of. Yes.
None. That was a testament to I didn't have uniform security. I got rid of all of the uniforms. I had to tell LAPD one time, I said, look, you were great, we're glad you're here, but walk around and enjoy yourself. But you can't stand at the gate in a uniform.
Intimidating people.
Yeah, like something's going to jump off, because that's as big an omen for us as if there's something actually happened. So that, and then after a while, we became one of the top events in Los Angeles by the fire department and the police department. They didn't have to worry about anything jumping off there.
I got to interject there because it started in 1985. By the beginning of the 1990s, this city was ablaze with urban violence. So it speaks volumes to the impact of the African marketplace on the social behavior of our people during the time that event was transpiring.
Yeah, we played a role in making sure that people got together, respected the Afro-Latino community, the Afro-Asian community. I mean, there are still issues in Korea where Afro-Koreans are being ostracized by Koreans in Korea. The brother that played for Pittsburgh, wide receiver, he's a Afro-Korean.
Oh, yeah, I know you're talking about.
He made a statement one year, I have to go back home every year because there are people like me who don't have resources, and they were being treated badly. And I find that to be the case in a lot of countries around the world, The marketplace became something that the Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation recognized. Even Wells Fargo gave us offers a line of credit of $500,000 because they see that the event was built on economics. It was built on business. It was built on sustainability. I didn't have grants, and at one point I had a big conflict in Los Angeles between the African marketplace and one community thought we were trying to be anti-Semitic, and it became a big issue, and I demonstrated to them, no, it's not, that this community is not concerned about the situation that's happening in the Jewish community. We're more concerned about the situation that's happening in the black community, and that's where our interest is. So that's another story. It took about 6 months, but I loved it because it was 6 months of publicity I couldn't have bought. We were on the front page of LA Times, KABC radio. It was fascinating. But we all came out friends to a certain degree, but that didn't stop me getting letters every year.
So at what point did you notice the global impact of the African marketplace?
I got a call from UCLA and from one of the representatives of the Rockefeller Foundation in 1990, and he asked me if he could bring a number of arts entrepreneurs from Africa to meet with me, because he had talked to UCLA and they asked him, is anyone in Los Angeles doing anything on arts and economic development? And they said, no, the only one that's talking stuff like that is James Burks. Because at that time I was having odds with a lot of traditionally European groups in Los Angeles in terms of the arts, because I was looking at arts as a tool for economic development in my community, right? And so we met, we talked, and he started bringing groups to meet with me. And I spent time with them for 2 or 3 days, just discussing some of the stuff I'm discussing with you. It's a lot more detailed in a lot of ways, because when I think about the arts, I think about the changes that we've been able to initiate in the city, that we don't get credit for. And
give me an example of that.
This is the whole tourism industry in downtown LA. African Americans have an economic impact over $115 billion a year annually on tourism, domestically on tourism in the United States, and a big domestic impact on tourism here. Watts wasn't rebuilt for over 30 years, and it's still not. Watts was a better place when I grew up there than it is now. So was Compton, and it's changed.
That's changing as we speak, slowly, but it's not looking like us anymore, but it's changing.
Yeah, it's changed, and and when you go along Central Avenue, there were at least 15 historical places that some you can even name now, not just the Dunbar Hotel, but Club Alabama, the 5-4 Ballroom, Central Park, South Park rather, the Jefferson High School, the California Golden State Mutual Life Insurance Building, California Golden Eagle Building, Lincoln Theater over there. The first African American professional building is over there. There's so much along Central Avenue that we can be very proud of that you don't get an opportunity to learn in school. So with the marketplace, I decided to tackle all of that. And so creating the website AfricanAmericanLA.com. So sending CDs to the hotels so they had a Black Convention or Conference in L.A., they would they play the CD on their internal system so people know where you need to get information on where to go in Los Angeles to enjoy yourself, you know. Even on the strip where we're sitting right now, you got Mavericks Flat, that's historic. You got the Total Experience building, which is not one of a few doors from here, that's also. You have the Vision Theater, that's historic, that's being renovated. And then the Checkmates, where Regency West is, used to be called Checkmates, was a great place. I mean, I was in college, I was involved in a group called Mindbender Production with Gerald Busby and a bunch of people. So we all started, it was 7 of us, started a group called Mindbender Production. We were doing dances around the city of LA, you know, in Hollywood and near the airport, at the Littleton's Patio, at the Regency, at the Checkmates. You know, it's a great organization. And later we got involved in the production of Watch Stacks at the Coliseum. So
that was 1971.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it was great. It's a great time, you know. I think it's changed a lot now. Los Angeles has changed a great deal, not just a lot. While this is still largely a black community here, it was not then, in that time.
What was it?
Baldwin Hills, Winter Hills,
Oh,
Crenshaw
okay.
area.
The area that we're in right now.
Right.
Okay, the immediate area. Okay. But back to when they referenced you in terms of a unique and African-centered perspective to these people over UCLA, then what did that materialize into?
Well, one, people begin to come to it and look at it and say, wow, this is a great place. So in 1990, Peter Sellers, who was doing the LA Festival after the Olympics, they matured into became the Los Angeles Festival. Every 3 years they do a festival that was focused on one theme. And they came to me in 90 and said, we're doing the festival in 1993, and the theme is Africa. And we'd like for the African marketplace to be part of it. I said, okay, that'd be interesting. We talked about it a little more, and he said, what would it take? I said, well, look, you guys give me, I want a gospel festival, and I want an Aborigine group from Australia to perform at next year's marketplace, 1992. And we will be part of the African marketplace, part of the LA Festival in 1993. And they did, and people were amazed to see Aborigines playing the didgeridoo and dancing on stage. It was really fabulous, you know, to bring Africans that people normally don't equate.
You heard of them, but you never thought
Right.
you'd see them in Los Angeles.
And that year we had a little bit of everybody at the marketplace. And then that year they also had a meeting out at the Silite Temple out near Whittier, which is the largest temple in the United States. And they had a meeting and brought all of the well-known African-American special event producers and artists around the country. We're in a room for 2-3 days talking about the LA Festival. At the end of those 2 or 3 days, what's her name? Barbara Lee, she's a writer, stood up and said to Peter Sellers, we don't know why you guys brought us here, because you guys have the best African marketplace festival event in the United States in the African marketplace. Now, I never asked them to say that, so of course that led to a bunch of other stuff. People don't like to be told wrong. So that year I was headed to, of leaving the country. I was going to either Cuba or Sweden for something on xenophobia, and they asked me, "You got to give us a proposal. You got to give us a proposal." So I gave them a proposal. Now this is a festival that raises $6 million. I gave them a proposal for $150,000, and I said, you give us $150,000, we will triple the impact of that amount of money. When I got back, my name was all in the LA Weekly, LA Reader about how dare James Burks.
Ask for that kind of money?
Yeah, man. That was no money. And so then I started having disagreements with them and with the president of Cal Arts, who was on a committee. We were all at UCLA one time, and a couple of other people who don't look like me, you know. And I just chalked it up to, well, they just don't understand, you know. $150,000 is no money. You're spending $650,000. You spend $600,000 on, $6 million on an event. I asked for $150,000. So I proceeded to. They proceeded to give me $15,000. I went ahead and took it, even though I didn't need it. And that year, the combined festivals had 711,000 people. we had 363,000 of them. And on less money, probably a tenth of the money that they did that on. And most of the money for the marketplace, the earned revenue stream that I would create, the ticket sales, and that time we were free. I didn't start going to charging until later when I knew we were growing and we had to find another revenue. I wasn't getting that much corporate dollars, corporate sponsorship. I had a $500,000 grant from the Ford Foundation to continue to construct and to do other things around the world. But, you know, I never saw it as an impediment to what we wanted to get done, you know.
So before we go to break and then come back in the second half of this very important interview from my vantage point with James Burks, a couple of quick questions. What endures from the many years of the African marketplace in terms of your mindset and some of the lasting benefits of the African marketplace?
And not a day goes by and someone doesn't ask me, will we ever have the African marketplace again? At one time, I had people accusing me of killing our African marketplace. And even the people I work for now are no longer well, you know, you're not supposed to do the market. We don't want any part of the marketplace. We don't have nothing to do with it in the Cultural Affairs Department. I mean, I went to a point where a lady, who worked for Cultural Affairs, I may have mentioned it already, just told me that the logo was insensitive to black people, so they're not going to print the poster.
You told me about that off camera.
Yeah, she actually told me this. And I looked at myself, I said, God, am I black? And then Al Nodell came in, the new general manager, and he looked at it, he said, I like it. He's Cuban, and he understood. It was an image that was sort of a middle-road image for African Americans, Afro-Middle Easterns, Afro-Africans, you know, it worked for us. Mm-hmm. And so that's been the logo ever since, and since then I took the marketplace totally out of William Grunstead Arts Center and out of the Cultural Affairs Department, built a nonprofit organization around it, and built a lot of spinoffs from it that still work to this day.
Such as?
Well, we built when we did it, we wanted to expand it so that it was far-reaching. I didn't mind going to people and showing them how to do it. It wasn't about trying to own it. We had pitched a show called Shop Africa in the Caribbean to the Home Shopping Network, and they liked the idea and tried to. They produced 3 of them without my knowledge, and I had that attorney because they didn't think I was bright enough to trademark and copyright it. Right. So I had to copy back. And then we built the first African Marketplace boutique at the Crenshaw Mall, the 10,000 square foot space. We did that in partnership with the mall and with Magic Johnson Theaters and with Urban League to build something that would be sustainable. I had this idea that, you know, it's hard for black business people to get into a mall. It's very expensive. But if you do a co-op in the mall without looking like a co-op and looking more like a department store, because all the products and things there, the bedroom linen stuff, the kitchen, the art pieces are there, the jewelry are there. So I created it so it looked like it was a store.
A store, yeah.
And so that ran for 15 years. Then I created the Global Cinema and Urban Media Symposium in Salvador Bahia, Brazil. I was there to speak at a conference called Cultural Mercado, and they had a film festival that a woman out of New York was doing, and I asked her, why are you doing a film festival? There's 49 of them. Everybody does a film festival. Only a handful of people see the film, and then the filmmaker gets no money out of it because you're not selling the film. Why not do a film conference and bring the film festival producers here? Let's talk about an alternative distribution network. Let's talk about building a super film festival. We take the best of all the small film festivals and put them in a super festival, and then bring all of the people who are buying content here so they see it in one-stop shop. You know, I went to the Meetum conference in Cote d'Ivoire, and I liked how that was set up. And the conference in Cannes, I liked how that was set up. This was unique. And then we did the African Marketplace Small Business Center in Leimert Park. When the Cultural Affairs Department kicked the marketplace out of the William Grunstead Arts Center, I had to come up with a place to eat up that cost, you know, because we now had to pay for utilities and space and maintenance and insurance and telephone system, internet system. So I decided to build it in sort of a co-op. So we were renting desk space and office space to people, and what they would get in return was access to internet, access to a receptionist, access to the mailbox, and access to the conference room. And they didn't need all of that space. They didn't have to pay for it. So the cost was like $250 a month. And they had access to me also and to the resources I would bring to their event. So those things were positive. Then I opened a second store in Fox Hills Mall when Westfield, who owned all these malls, came to us and said, "We like the store you have here. Can you do the same thing for us?" And I opened one in Westfield's Fox Hills Mall. That one lasted 5 years.
So we're going to take a short pause and come back and talk about what's going on with your, I guess, second phase of the African marketplace under a different title. And but again, you said at the top of the show, it's the same vision. So we'll be back in 2 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, we just had a snippet from the incredible musical legacy of Miles Davis, So What? And I think that's fitting and appropriate as I sit here with another eclectic, cutting-edge personality, one James Burks, who moved into a realm that would in many ways be just another traditional director of a portion of Los Angeles' cultural affairs department, but it has morphed into something that I think is very, very important as we look at this community, the Leimert Park area. One of the things that I found out in my preparation for this show was a little history about Leimert Park that I didn't know, that the Vision Theater was built in 1932, wasn't it?
Right.
And the family was the Leimert family, and there was an association with the late billionaire, eccentric person, Howard Hughes. And here we are, all these many years later, and the Vision Theater is under the stewardship of one James Burks. So if you would briefly tell us how you ended up in a position to be a part of such a very important historic renovation and how that's going and what your expectation for it in terms of impact and life in this part of South Los Angeles.
Well, I got to go back a little bit ways because after the successes I had with the African marketplace, Al Nodell asked me if I would come downtown in 1991 and take over the Performing Arts Division for the city of Los Angeles. Unique position because you're a black man in the second most important position in the arts in Los Angeles. I acted as acting general manager on occasion, and then when I took over, I was responsible for all the festivals in Los Angeles. So we built the festivals. We had 66 festivals, somewhere around 105, 106 that were being done at the time, including Fiesta Broadway, the Filipino festival that I had at hand, and we're actually building the Pacific Island Festival, the Jewish festival over at Fairfax High School. We had quite a few festivals in L.A. We became the city of festivals. I spent 2 years there, left there, and went back to William Branstell Arts Center and did several other things, jobs in the arts and other while running William Branstell Arts Center. I was in charge of, Mayor Bradley had asked me if I would go out and help Nick Stewart with the Ebony Showcase Theater.
Oh, yeah.
And Nick was gotten himself into a bind with a loan company, and they were trying to foreclose on this building. So Assemblywoman Gwen Moore, who's probably one of my biggest friends and supporters for the marketplace.
Again, just for posterity, Nick Stewart and the Ebony Showcase Theater, a little history about that theater and
it's probably questionably the oldest black theater in the United States. Nick Stewart played Lightning on Amos and Andy and a number of other films, that he actually starred in with his roles, Stephen Fetchit and all that other stuff that he had to do to make a dime, I'm sure he didn't like it because I've had several conversations. In fact, I have an interview with him before he passed. But he had a theater that he actually started over here on Western, and then he was able to get a Jewish guy to buy the building that he ended up at over on Washington Boulevard, just between La Brea and...
Which is now the Nate Holden Performing Arts Theater. Okay.
And so when we jumped in, we tried to help save this building. He had a 250-seat building, a 99-seat theater. He had upstairs apartment rooms, and he had the property in back. And Gwen Moore at that time was Assemblywoman Gwen Moore, was able to get Union Bank to agree to give him a loan to help pay off that $800,000 loan he had. But he refused the loan because he wanted the city just to give him $800,000. And as you know, when you work for the bureaucracy, you work for the government, you can't give away public dollars. So they weren't able to do that, and he refused the money and all that because they wanted him to hire someone to manage the property so they get their money paid back. And since when he didn't do it, then the riots broke out in L.A. during the same time. And I went to the Korean who had purchased the paper on his property, and I told him, Mr. Kim, I said, look, this riot in Los Angeles is a lot more than just your loan. It's between Koreans and African-American community and the Latino community. And this is the oldest black theater in Los Angeles for sure, and a theater people hold in high regards. You kick them out of this building, it's going to be a whole lot of problems in the city. So Mr. Kim understood and let him stay in the building for at least 4 additional years. Unfortunately, he didn't make any payments on the note, or he probably still had the building. And so when they finally kicked him out of the building, I went to Nate Holden and I said, look, we have to purchase this building some kind of way. So he got the Community Redevelopment Agency to purchase the building. And initially he raised $5 million to rehab it. And I was out of the country. They called me and said, James, we don't want to rehab. The General Services don't want to rehab the building because it may be an issue. This is when General Services had no problem just tearing down buildings. I'll tell you that because it has a lot to do with the Vision Theater, too. And I said, well, if you're going to tear it down, I want to hold the marquee. I want to hold 3,000 of the bricks, because I wanted to have something to remember. And they're somewhere stored somewhere. I don't know where. I wish I can find them. And then we had to raise an additional $10 million to build what's now the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center. There were a lot of complications in that process. I went around the city, I went around the country, I found plans of theaters I liked to put into it. I wanted 600 seats, it's 390. It's difficult to run a theater with 390 seats because financially, your ticket
just
prices
didn't pencil out.
And so then Nate was pushing it because he was terming out, so he rushed the development job, so there were mistakes made in the building. Little mistakes like no restrooms on the second floor, electrical panels being placed where they shouldn't have been placed. I ended up going back over there a few years later, running it for a couple of years, and I had all those things fixed, with the exception of the restroom on the second floor. That's something you can't fix as a structural thing. I wanted, when I was first involved, I wanted a separate club down on the first floor because you can run it all the time. You can run musical theater all the time. It's simple enough to do it. It's low cost. I wanted a recording studio because the kids at that time were involved in hip-hop and it was becoming a big thing in our community. They just needed a recording studio they can rent. And I wanted a gallery space. That would have sustained the facility. The Vision Theater came on board. I was involved in that too. When in 1998, when Marla lost the theater.
Marla Gibbs.
I had actually approached Marla about buying the theater in 1980 because it was up for sale. And I was at William Grant, so I was at the Inner City Cultural Center at the time. Then it was only about $500,000. By the time she purchased it, I think it cost her $1.2 million rather. And then when she lost it, I went to, then it was Mark Lee Thomas was involved. He called a committee together and we talked about the city taking on their product. CRA was still there and it made a good sense. And I encouraged him to buy not just the building, but the property behind it, because behind it there were 4 commercial buildings. One was a 200-seat hospitality restaurant. There was a brand new kitchen in it. The other 3 were rental pieces of property. Then there was a 99-seat theater that Marla had outfitted, and then there was an office space and a dance studio upstairs. They were sustainable, because they were all Art Deco buildings. But General Services tore them down. That's where the parking lot is now. So there's no sustainable money behind the Vision Theater, and that's going to take tasks. And one of the things I'm trying to do right now, when I started the marketplace, I started looking, where do you anchor the black community? Because I've watched the black community move from up downtown to Central Avenue, Watts, and Compton. And each time, there's no anchors in those communities. You tear down a few buildings, it's like one never existed. Yeah. So Leimert Park was one of those anchors. I had 10 sites that I selected for the permanent marketplace. And right now what I'm trying to do is recall some of those ideas I had about Leimert Park. And the first step was changing Leimert Park from just a special event place where you have outdoor festivals and every 10 a year or 15 a year and then, or you come down because you're going to Barbara Morrison's Performing Arts Center or the World Stage, to one that's more like a campus where you have all of that going on and it all connected throughout the year. So that gives us a destination for tourism. And that's what I've been working on the last 2 years. I've been in charge of the vision about 6 years now, when the city downsized and got rid of part of the Cultural Affairs Department. So I took over the responsibility of this theater and the Madrid Theater out in Canoga Park. And I'm at the point right now where I'm trying to make some decision of what I'm going to do, because now it becomes more of me. If I had quit Cultural Affairs back in the 90s and 2000, I'd probably been well off. I'd still traveling a lot and dealing with the country, because Marketplace could have paid me a sizable salary, but I didn't get paid from that event because I didn't want it to appear to be conflict of interest. So ethics committee get involved. In fact, when I took a consulting job for San Francisco, the one thing I did was on the Marketplace, because San Francisco was going to build a permanent Marketplace. And I flew back and forth up there for 3 or 4 years, speaking with the city officials and the Hunters Point community about the viability of building an African Marketplace as the key part of Hunters Point. Because it's diverse, it represents all of the cultures there. And when it was finally decided they were going to do that, I got the city of LA to sign off on my contract with them to be a consultant on the project. But during the latter part of 2000, 2008, and 9, 10, the economy was bad all over. So that project was put on hold. And also because of some disagreements with some of the people in our homes who was tasked with building it, because they got the rest of access to the rest of the property to build with the homes and the houses they wanted to build there. So it was little for them to think about building the African Marketplace. We're talking about something that's going to cost less than $250 million, but it's going to return was going to be great. So Leimert Park, I think, has that opportunity, because we're right now looking at closure of the rest of the streets and putting in kiosks so that you can nurture and incubate small businesses. I started the Vision Theater Festival 4 years ago now. We just finished the 4th one. Designs on building and bringing a National Black Theater Festival here on the off years of the East Coast National Black Theater Festival. I looked at building a consortium to operate the theater, because I figured that through consortium they can raise the kind of operating capital it needs to run that theater. And building stronger partnerships with the Regency West, with Fernando Pullum Art Center, Barbara Morrison's Performing Arts Center, the California Jazz and Blues Museum, the World Stage, Art and Practice, and the merchants over there, and Chaos Network, and LA Third Church, that builds a real nice cadre of people who are like-minded, creative industry kind of individuals that's going to support that area, going to support Leimert Park Village, going to support whatever we do there to become part of the tourist destination in Los Angeles.
That really just excites me on a couple of levels, because a couple of weeks ago I stopped by your office with a gentleman who is a visionary in his own right by the name of Wayne Fishback. He's an architect by profession, and we have been collaborating on some other elements. And one of the things that in the coming weeks I'm going to stop by and talk to you about is doing something that adds one more component to, just kind of solidifying this community, and that is health and wellness as it relates to localizing the food economy and attracting vendors into this community that will be able to enrich the community from a health and wellness standpoint. But one thing that you said that I'm really just thankful that I had you on the show today, and that is that you continue to breathe life into a vision that started when you were 7, 8 years old, based on some other conversation that we had about being industrious and thinking forward, and then playing it forward. So 5 years from now, what do you envision the Leimert Park community looking like?
I don't know. I'm going to be on the beach in Cuba, man, enjoying myself.
I know you mean that, but
you know I do.
Yeah, you mean it, but you'll be going there anyway. You're going to Cuba in a couple.
I'm supposed to be there. I'm supposed to be there today. I had to cancel my trip because of Hurricane Maria.
Oh, okay, okay.
But I go to Cuba. I've been to Cuba 43 times, taking groups for
43 times
for people exchanges, for the culture, for conferences. It's just a great place. I mean, I've never been to a country where literacy rate is so high. 99% literacy rate, the highest in the world, where you can sit down with a conversation with somebody and they're probably a PhD in astrophysics or something. I mean, it's just an amazing city. I mean, it's culturally rich. I mean, culture is promoted there as part of the industry of Cuba. They export doctors in Cuba. And while there's some challenges in Cuba, you still have to appreciate the fact that there's a quality of life there that you can't just buy. You have to feel it, you have to be it. It's like what they say about Ubuntu is, I exist, therefore you exist.
So what country, Cuba, Brazil, the African diaspora, has had the greatest impact on how you see the world?
Yeah, it's funny because in 1995, the African community here in Los Angeles came to me at the opening of a gala at the Natural History Museum. They said, wow, we want to do something for you because you've been so focused on helping Africa. We want to make you a chief. Pick any country on the continent, and that's where we're going to have you installed. So I chose Ghana. And they found someone here who could make that happen. And I was installed in Ghana with 63 people. KGLE's radio broadcast the installment. I had my mother, my father, my son, 4 of my aunts there with me, and the rest were friends. And
they went to Africa with you?
They went to Africa with me. And I mean, it was a huge installment. It normally takes a 2-week process. Mine was done in 2 days because I was there only for a short time. But you have to go through a whole ritual to be installed as a chief. I'm not someone that just made say your name was Nana James. My African name was Nana Kweku Boafo Miko Bohini, and it was based on what I'd been doing.
You say that like you know what you're talking about.
Sometimes. They hear people in the world, they say, well, he's arrogant. No, arrogance is another way of saying he's just afraid. I'm scared to let you into all of this because I don't know where you're coming from.
Right.
But no, I think I've been influenced most by Ghana. I like what Rollins did, and I have had several long conversations with him, and I appreciate and respect him. I also like Cote d'Ivoire. I enjoy Senegal quite a bit. I've been to South Africa many times.
I got to take off on Senegal. When I was at the University of Tennessee back in 1974, 75, I believe it was, they had a dance troupe from Senegal. Now, keep in mind, I'm from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, right? And I'm still coming out of that, just limited exposure to the African culture, right? And this dance troupe came out on the stage. Must have been 75 people, man.
National Ballet of Senegal.
Oh, my God. I had never to this day seen anything as explosive and as vibrant and as... I can't even find the words to describe how they just went through you, to see.
That's the thing about the world African diaspora and culture, man. I mean, I get the same feelings with that company and watching the company out of Salvador Bahia, Brazil, folklorico dance company, the Ballet Folklorico. The same thing out of Cuba. When you go to Cuba, the dance is just phenomenal. Modern, the Afrocentric dances, the religions, Candomblé in Cuba, Santeria in Cuba, Candomblé in Brazil, Voodoo in Haiti, and Yoruba in Nigeria. You gotta love you just gotta love us, man. We're different, and from Indonesia to Africa, we're just different. We bring something different in terms of where we live. And I think my greatest influences now has been I spent a lot of time in Cuba and Brazil. I'm getting ready to go back to work on something in Brazil. I started 10 years ago working on the diabetes because now you got major American industries down there, so diabetes.
They made everybody acclimate to the American diet.
Fast foods.
Yeah.
They got them down there, and now diabetes is running rampant. And we saw this, Dr. Demi and Miranda and myself, back in the mid-2004 or 5. I've taken several major tour groups to Brazil. Just so that we can have this dialogue and this exchange. Salvador is a sister city to Los Angeles, which gave me an opportunity to bring Deputy Mayor there, Ken Lombard, who then was over the mall, and with Maddie Johnson's Productions, and then the General Manager of Cultural Affairs, Stan Washington, was with American Express, and we all came to Cuba to see what I saw. I saw an opportunity to build relationship between the African American community and the African diaspora community for business, and not social work. Because you were saying you like to do something with food. I think if we can build it economically, we can do that.
Well, I'm dead set on that because I'm tired of going to funerals here. So just imagine what it's like over there. Yeah. As we wrap up, Chief, I want to know that you're going to hang around long enough, man, to impregnate somebody with this vision, because it's imperative to this community and ultimately to the world that we capture the work that you've already put in and then have that transfer to somebody that understands the significance of this work. And I just want to thank you for coming on my show tonight, man. And again, man, it's an honor to have known you all these many years and to be able to see you wherever I see you. And we've never had anything but a warm experience together, man. And I just want to thank you for stopping by Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, man.
No, you're right. Every now and then I got to get country, and this is a great place.
Ain't gonna get no country in here, brother. I tell you that.
No, and to answer your question, I'm working on it now, and I'm working with a group called Conscious Youth Global Network, trying to tell them that somebody's got to take over this, because our leadership right now has dwindled a lot because our community has dwindled. Either they're in bad straits, they're incarcerated, or the food, or the drugs, or
all the above. Yeah.
So I'm working on it. I've given them about 3 more years. I think I would do this until this theater's finished and open and the light rail system is here, and we find a position for us without people giving it away. And
that's so important. And that's an ongoing theme with me because, again, the focal point of my show is models of possibility and best practices. And tonight, I know I have met both of those marks by having you here. And I want you to not be a stranger here, man, because this is what's happening in Los Angeles right now is being replicated in an adverse way all over the country, and that is the exclusion of the African American perspective on what this city and the country and the world will look like. And what you're doing and have done is something that we need to keep a nice big spotlight on, because I think Marcus Garvey said it best: what men have done, men can do. But you got to know about it. And so thank you for coming on here tonight and showing folks that everybody in L.A. ain't just L.A. to the beach and all of that. Some people have been entrenched in the evolution of this city, particularly as it relates to the performing arts, and as a result of that, social and economic implications, man. So I salute you and your work, man, and for coming on my show tonight.
You're welcome, man. You're in a great studio. I like this space.
Well, that's because we got a sister in here who's cut out of the same cloth that you are. She refuses.
Well, you got to give her a commercial, man.
OG Portis, man. Morris Media Studios. That's where we are each and every Tuesday night. She is 7 days a week. And I'm excited that she's having a chance to meet you, and hopefully you and her will get a chance to share some exchange some ideas about what can enhance this community, because she's embedded just like you are.
I agree. I look forward to it. Thank you both.
All right. So thank you once again for watching Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. Please tell a friend, and for letting me be myself again. Until next week, we're out of here.